Hello friends, welcome to this week's landscape photography vlog. And in this episode, we're chasing waterfalls in the Pacific Northwest. I share some new images that I'm really proud of, some mistakes I made along the way, and my favorite shooting technique that allows me to get more creative waterfall images. Our adventure begins at a small waterfall in the Columbia River Gorge. I really hope you enjoy the video.
Should be pretty fun. Right now, I've got the 16-35 on the Sony A1. Got my little water droplet blower. And I'm going to try and get a wide angle shot of this beautiful waterfall in Oregon. Not the biggest waterfall in the world. I think this one's only about 20 or 30 feet, but I love the shape that you've got here. Symmetrical, and then all these different rocks that the water's splashing onto. It creates all these cool patterns.
I ended up rushing to this location and I didn't really have a whole lot of time right after sunset. It was already starting to get a bit dark, so that was my first mistake on this shoot.
I'm a little torn if I want to include the sky or not. I can always include the sky and then crop it out later, which is probably the more smart way of composing this. I'm going to use ISO 100, and right now I'm doing about f14 and a 2-second exposure. So let's see how that turns out. I don't know if this composition's working that much. I like this bit right here, a bit of texture going on, but I don't know if just in general, the shape of the composition, I'm not a huge fan of. So whenever I'm a little uncertain of the composition, I just kind of pop it off the tripod. Let's go ahead and pop it off the tripod and move around. If you're uncertain about a composition and you're using a wide angle lens, best thing to do is just to move.
I was trying really hard to make this wide-angle shot work, and I was perhaps trying way too hard because the compositions just ended up looking too messy and I couldn't find the right flow to the image. So I decided to switch my lens to my handy 100-400 to see if I could pick out a section of the waterfall.
And I'm just looking for areas of the waterfall that I can pick out with the lens and get a few different streaming patterns and sort of simplify everything.
So even though it was really dark and I had to do long exposures, here's how the shot turned out. So I ended up doing a 10-second exposure here at f5 and ISO 400, and it really brought out some of the beautiful reflected light on the rocks that was still shining from the last bits of sunset glow. And then I was able to bring that out even further in Photoshop. I thought that the repetition of shape here was really cool, and the different diagonal patterns. It definitely was working a lot more than the wide-angle shots. But since this was one of the first locations of the trip, I felt like this was almost a warm-up, and it just got me more excited to explore more waterfalls later on. The next day, I ventured out with my friend Andrew Studer on a beautiful hike through the Mount Hood Wilderness.
So, unfortunately, we realized both of us forgot our SD cards, and so there's not much of a point to actually go. So we're gonna head back, meet up with our buddy TJ, and probably just get happy hour somewhere.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching.
So, got the 100-400 lens out here, as I usually do. and just trying to pick out some different sections of this really massive waterfall. I think this waterfall is about 100 feet tall, and there's just all these different sections where the water is falling off the rocks. So you get all these little individual waterfalls to focus on. And those are my favorite types of waterfalls, the ones where you have a bunch of different areas to pick out rather than just one, big fall coming down. And so let me show you what this looks like through the 100 to 400 lens. You can see as I aim this lens around, there's just so many options right here. It's endless. There's so many cool angles to shoot. And earlier, just a few minutes ago, we actually had some dappled light hitting the waterfall, but it was super fast. There was just some light that kind of pierced through the trees. Now the light is gone and we're just working with diffuse light, which is fine because it still looks really, really, really pretty right now.
Okay, so before I show you the image with diffuse light, let me show you what it looked like when the sunset glow was hitting the falls. These little specks of light were beautiful to witness and a little bit tricky to capture. They were moving super fast in different positions as that sun would dip through the tree line. So I had to be very quick, and I'm really happy with the way this composition came out. I love how you have the zigzagging pattern of the water matched with the diagonal streaks created by the light. After shooting this one, I zoomed into 400 millimeters and then I shot this. I love what the light did to the rock in this image, making it look like a piece of gold. I also love the simple symmetrical composition here, which created a nice triangle shape. Here's one that I thought was really cool, and the mist coming off of the waterfall gave a really nice dreamy look to this photograph. I also thought the color scheme here with the blue shadows, the golden light, and then a bit of that green foliage worked really well.
All right, so as you can tell, it got a lot darker in here. It's just crazy how quickly, when that sun hits the horizon, it just gets so dark in these wooded areas with the waterfalls. It's fine if you have a waterfall that's out in the open, that's catching all the sunlight, but it's pretty heavily forested with all these waterfalls we've been shooting, and they get really dark. So I've had to bump my ISO to about 400, pull the f-stop down as much as possible, and I'm still able to hit a really nice shutter speed. I tried some longer ones like 30 seconds and 20 seconds. I realize those are maybe a little bit too long for what I'm going for. I like when you can see a little bit more of the texture with the shorter shutter speeds. But so far, I'm finding a lot of really cool composition stills. Yeah, overall, I think there's a nice bit of symmetry going on. You've got the darker bits right here on the right side, left side. And yeah, so I think I'm gonna try this one. ISO 400. Bump my shutter speed. I think I'm gonna have to actually do a 4-second exposure unless I bump my ISO to 800.
Alright, so here's the final shot that I was just working on. And even though the lighting is a little bit less dramatic here than the previous photos, I liked how it helped to simplify things and give this image a nice monochromatic look. Unfortunately, it was getting really dark at the falls, and this would be my last composition.
Well, once again, it's gotten way too dark to film anything, way too dark to shoot any photography. So I think I'm gonna wrap this one up.
I had the chance to visit some other incredible waterfalls on my trip, but I didn't get the opportunity to vlog them. But I still wanted to show you some of those images from those beautiful locations. This one was really cool. This was from a waterfall in Washington. So again, this is using the 100 to 400 lens to focus on really close into a section of the falls and really just isolate out that spot. In this case, those tufts of moss that are sticking out of the falls made for some beautiful texture to focus on and created some really nice patterns in the water. As with most of my photography, I started creating little stories in my head of what this image could represent other than a waterfall. And in this case, I see some little alien creatures. I'm curious, what do you end up seeing? These images were all super fun to capture, and each waterfall presented a different experience and a different challenge. Some waterfalls were more powerful and had a lot of spray to deal with. Other ones were a little tougher to navigate, so you had to work hard to find a specific spot to stand to actually get the composition you were looking for. But overall, I was just having a blast experimenting and playing around. So my friend Patricia and I were driving around the gorge looking for different waterfalls one afternoon, and I ended up getting some of my favorite images of the trip. There's something I really liked about this specific image. It almost has a haunting quality to it. As the bigger part of the waterfall would kick up a bunch of mist, it gave some incredible diffusion to the image and made it look really surreal and dreamy. To me, this image resembles some sort of ghostly spirits that are just kind of shooting up into the air. It's really interesting to capture waterfalls like this, where the water starts to not even look like water anymore. As that water would graze the top of each individual rock, it would backlight it, making it look silhouetted and really enhancing its shape. So in this case, I don't really end up seeing a waterfall anymore. I almost see the silhouettes of different figures shining through the darkness. So you'll notice there's something a bit different about this image than the rest. This was the only short exposure that ended up making it to my final edits. But I'm glad I took this one to mix it up a bit. So I would encourage you, if you're out there capturing waterfalls and you're doing a bunch of long exposures, try bumping your ISO, taking your f-stop down, and then taking your shutter speed to freeze the water in midair. I really loved the V shape of this composition made up of the falls and then the nice triangle shape towards the bottom of the image to balance it out. So it ended up taking me about 50 frames to get this symmetrical composition. And it's not like I was changing my framing, it was just due to the water shifting in different spots of the image. Some of the photos I took had the water more on the left side, some had more on the right side. It took a lot of time to find this balanced frame here. So another tip I would give you with this style of photography is to be patient. Don't just take one frame and then move on to another composition. You might need a bit of variety and a few minutes to capture the water in the right position. So I've shared a ton of images in this video, and there was a lot of variety of different types of waterfall scenes. And now I'm curious to hear from you, which one ended up being your favorite? Please let me know in the comments. Now, of course, my favorite technique is using that 100 to 400 lens to pick out different sections of the waterfall, but really the bigger takeaway from this video, and the thing that's more important than the gear itself, is just being creative. Really, that's all it is. Just go out there, have fun, and don't just shoot the most obvious composition of the waterfall you can see. If you are using a wide-angle lens, play around with different foregrounds, look for different framing elements, move around the waterfall. And if you're using a telephoto lens, look for those different sections that's going to give you beautiful shapes and patterns and a nice compositional flow. With that, I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, please give the video a thumbs up, leave a comment, and consider subscribing to the channel for more. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one.